Alright, IS-0230, Fundamentals of Emergency Management, FEMA, Lesson 7, Overview of Emergency Management Program Functions. This lesson presents functioning of the emergency management program. At the completion of this lesson, you should be able to describe the role of local laws establishing emergency management authorities and responsibility, distinguish between core functions and program functions, identify emergency management activities, specific actions, situations, and roles, identify emergency management principle applied to each scenario. This lesson should take approximately 30 minutes. Emergency management functions based on the local law, specifically areas of authority responsibility. Emergency management should be clearly stated in local ordinance and laws. Ordinance and laws should spell out with the responsibility of emergency management, daily operation, policy, decision, action, affecting long-term emergency management, final authority, actual disaster situation. Provide a specific line of succession. Elected officials will require with the Department of Government with established lines of succession. Ensure the continuing of government and leadership of the emergency to define and delineate problem, responsibility, scopes, and authority standards of the position. Emergency program management for all hazard integrated local emergency plan and for mutual support. Types of emergency management function. The lesson shows the two ways categories of emergency management activity based on the functions performed during an emergency and the functions that occurred on a day-to-day basis. Alright, you on the left, you have your emergency management core functions during an emergency and emergency management program functions day to day. Which of the following areas of authority responsible for emergency management should be stated in local ordinances? Define and delineated responsibilities, specific lines of succession elected, identification of responsible emergency management day to day. I believe the area would be then D. I guess you can select more than one. And that was incorrect. The following is identification, responsibility, emergency management, specific lines of succession, and define delineated responsibility. Alright, emergency management core function. Most emergency operation plans include a full and functional annex, full core of functions implemented during emergency: direction, control, coordination, communication, population warning for emergency, public information, public protection, mass care, emergency assistance, health, medical services, and resource management. Direction and control and coordination. Ensure that the jurisdiction responsible can coordinate with the mutual aid partners as to all resources effectively and efficiently. Communications. Include system procedure for the first responders. All the emergency personnel able to communicate with each other, but not with public during an emergency. Population warning. Ensure the warning information about available to public and pre-scripted messages have been prepared to identify threats and hazards. Emergency public information. Includes public information on the whole community before and during and after an emergency. Public protection. Includes provisions of evacuation, in-place sheltering to ensure safety of the people threatened by threat and hazard. Mass care and emergency assistance. Includes actions taken to protect the evacuees over the efforts of the event, and includes sheltering, food distribution, medical care, clothing, and other essential life support for the need that would have been displaced during by a threat and hazard. Health and medical services. Provides health and medical services. Emergencies include emergency medical, hospital, public health, environmental health, mental health, and monetary services. Resource management. Includes procedure for the identification, profitable resource need, the description, and how additional resources will be acquired and distributed. Alright, day-to-day program function. In addition with the emergency core function, the emergency manager directs the day-to-day emergency management program. Common program functions include laws and authorities. Jurisdiction of the legal base for the establishment in the emergency of the management organization implementation emergency management program continue with the government with local and law ordinance is legal base for the consistent with the state statutes concerning emergency management. Threat and hazard analysis. Jurisdiction method identifying and evaluating natural, technological, human caused threats which jurisdiction in addition jurisdiction establishes compatible targets and identifies gaps. Planning. The jurisdiction developing plans for the building sustain capabilities through the comprehensive mitigation and emergency operation plan and other planning documents. Operations and procedures. This jurisdiction have the procedure conducting need of the damage assessment with requiring disaster assistance and conducting range response functions. Communication and population warning. This jurisdiction and the communication system capable of the need to reach for the whole community. Note that the function also jurisdiction allows jurisdiction to issue warnings before and during an emergency. Direction and control. This jurisdiction develops and tests the Emergency Operations Center operating procedure annually. Note the function enables the jurisdiction direct control coordinated during an emergency. Resource management. This jurisdiction has human resources required to carry out an assigned day-to-day responsibility. Note the function enables effective resource management during an emergency. Hazardous mitigation. This jurisdiction has a program in place to eliminate hazards that constitute significant threat, reduce the effects of the hazard that cannot be eliminated. Logistics and facilities. This jurisdiction, Emergency Operations Center, has the capability of sustaining emergency operation for the duration of the emergency. The jurisdiction developed a logistic management operation plan. Jurisdiction has worked with community partners to identify facility potential sites of feeding, sheltering, and commodity distribution. Training. This jurisdiction conducts annual training need assessment, incorporating courses of variable sources of offering training to all personnel assigned and emergency management responsibilities. Exercise evaluation correction. This jurisdiction emergency management exercise program exercises the emergency operation plan on an annual basis and incorporates evaluation component and corrective action program. Public education and information. This jurisdiction emergency preparedness public education program perceived to establish, disseminate, manage emergency public information in the disaster, perceived to develop by establishing, operating a joint information center. Note this day-to-day function enables the jurisdiction to implement emergency public information during an incident. And then finally, financing and administration. This jurisdiction has an administrative system to support day-to-day emergency operations. All right, operations planning. Well, I really don't care, but let's go on the next one. Alright, emergency management function action video.
Let's return to the train derailment scenario from an earlier lesson. Remember, a train carrying anhydrous ammonia derailed outside of the city limits at 3 a.m. The chairperson of the County Board of Supervisors declared a state of emergency, activating the EOP. The local EOP includes the county and all incorporated towns and cities within the county. There are mutual aid agreements with surrounding counties. The EOC opened, and policymakers gathered to direct the response. Warning sirens alerted the community, along with messages broadcast using traditional and social media. There were some delays in activating responders, who could not enter the accident vicinity without proper gear, as specified in the EOP Annex. To reduce exposure, residents first sheltered in their homes. Eventually, officials ordered 21 homes evacuated. One resident perished while attempting to leave the area. Local non-governmental organizations provided shelter to those evacuated. Responders and railroad personnel had conducted a recent joint exercise, which helped to reduce many potential communication problems. The jurisdiction's public information officer coordinated the release of information about the status of the incident, and information was released on the steps for treating exposure symptoms, cleaning homes, and dealing with exposed pets and livestock. Transportation and cleanup of hazardous materials is federally regulated. As federal officials arrived at the scene, they coordinated with the local EOC. The state health department is continuing to monitor air and water quality in the area. As the recovery process begins, the railroad and government officials will determine liability for costs. At a future date, all involved parties will conduct an after-action review to identify the lessons learned and be better prepared for the future.
Alright, emergency management program functions. Scroll down this table to see how the emergency program functions apply with the managing train derailment law authorities. The application train derailment scenario. Transportation hazard material is federally regulated, so federal regulations affect the local response. State health department continuing monitoring and water quality in the area. Water and air and water quality. Threat and hazard. The transportation hazard material cause the population cause the risk to release the emergency operation plan should have been annexed dealing with a hazard material. Planning a single plan that had tied together the county and city response to avoid conflicts to the completing emergency plan operation. Each department listed in the plan was notified and alerted its employees and volunteers. Communication and publication, population warning. Warning signs are alerted the community along with a message broadcast using traditional and social media. Directional control policy gathered by the Emergency Operations Center and established overall direction. Responsible federal officials arrived on the scene and they coordinated with the local Emergency Operations Center. Resource management. There was delays of activating responders. They could not either accident vicinity without proper gear and specified emergency operation plan. Hazard mitigation jurisdiction wants to just consider zones changing. The railroad company should have implemented additional protective measures. Logistic facilities and emergency operations center activated. Local non-government organization provided shelter in those evacuated. Training local responders have received training in dealing hazardous release, exercise, and evaluation corrective action. Responders of railroad personnel had conducted recent and joint exercise help to reduce any potential communication problems at a future day. All involved parties will conduct an after-action review, identify the lessons learned, and be better prepared for the future. Public education and information. The jurisdiction during public information offered coordinated release information about the status of the incident of the information release on the steps treating exposure and cleaning homes, dealing with exposed pets and livestock, and financing and administration as recovery begins. The railroad and government officials will determine the liability costs. Emergency management agency should be maintained. Record expense for the possibility compensation by the railroad. A joint effort. Integrated approach with emergency management is based on a solid general management principle to build with the partnership community project. Community protect life of the property. Integrated system, local, state, tribal, the federal governments, as well as the private sector agencies, nonprofit individuals, and families must share responsibility applying resources effectively at every stage of the phase of emergency management. While every part of the system has its own role, function, responsibility shared among all, joint effort resolve the product results and insights, experience, and skills of the entire team. Activity interdependence within the emergency management system. This is an activity. We'll read it anyways. We'll skip it actually. Activate 2. Activity 2. Activity 3. Or 2 of 2. Lesson 7 summary. Lessons introduce a different type of function provide emergency management, include core function performed during emergencies, program function performed day-to-day basis. But you are in analyze situation, describe application emergency management principle. In the next lesson, you will review information presented in this course. All right, lesson 8 overview. The purpose of this summary lesson are review the key concepts presented in the course, prepare for taking a final exam. Unless it should take it approximately 15 minutes to complete. Testing. Cut.